Thanks, thanks.
Uh,
Yeah. So, uh, so Max Weber also had a different take on capitalism. His understanding of capitalism was also inspired by Karl Marx, but he linked his version of capitalism to Protestantism. Okay, I don't know whether you're aware of who the Protestants are. Are you aware? Uh, you may answer in the chat box if you don't want to speak up. Are you aware of the Protestant denomination? Yeah. No. All right. So in somewhere in the 1500s, okay, uh, there was a mass movement against the church. Okay, the church was committing several kinds of atrocities amongst the people, and this is particularly in Europe. And what happened was that this movement that was led by Martin Luther, who was a German monk, monk. I hope you know who's a monk. Uh, they are people again, who devote their lives to the religious order. Okay, and so Martin Luther was a German monk, and he protested against the church atrocities. All right, the church was carrying on its own way of functioning, and Martin Luther believed that this was wrong. Okay, now the movement that came about, okay, with all of this was actually led into the formation of a new sect or a denomination of Christianity called as Protestants, okay, or Protestantism, okay. And now coming back to Max Weber, he came from a Protestant background, okay. Uh, the Protestant background was completely against the Catholic Church, all right. They did not subscribe to the Catholic way of religious belief, all right. Though they did believe in the basic tenets of Christianity, they believed that the Pope was not the head of the church, okay. And Max Weber grew up in such a background, all right. His mother was basically a Calvinist. Now, Calvinist is another sect of Protestantism, which believed that one needs to maintain a very Puritan kind of life. Okay, a Puritan meaning one who's very moral, one who is who makes every effort to do or behave righteously. Okay, so he came from this kind of a background, and therefore most of his thought is very heavily influenced, okay, by this kind of a belief system. Uh, Influenced in such a way that he almost went against this kind of a system. Okay, so he believed that capitalism had not or had nothing to do, as Marx spoke about. Like he kind of did not really attribute it to dialectic materialism and all of that. Okay, he believed that it is Protestantism that led to the rise of capitalism. Okay, and therefore he is very well known for his thesis of the Protestant ethic. Okay, and there is a book that he has written which is known as the Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. Okay, this is supposed to be considered as a very controversial work, and rightfully so. Okay, because he is very critical of the Protestant church itself, or the sect itself. He attributes the rise of capitalism also to Protestant ethics. Okay, um, so Weber basically believed that that capitalism came into the picture mainly because of uh, religion. Okay, and again, it was not just about every kind of religion, just as Marx had said that religion is the opium of the masses. He said, that is Weber said, that it is Protestantism or Protestant Christianity which is the rise of, or which has brought about the rise of capitalism. But again, unlike Marx, Weber supposed that there were more classes, okay, or more class divisions. Now, for Karl Marx, if you remember, he attributed the whole, the whole system or the stratification of society. He classified it into two classes of people, that is the bourgeois and the proletariat. Okay, but in the case of Weber, he believed that there were four main classes. Okay, one was the upper class, then came the white collar workers, that is, then the middle classes or the bourgeoisie, and then the fourth one was the manual working class. Okay, the ones who were involved in hard labor. Now, probably this is something that we can relate to in present times, okay, because we have seen this. We have seen this kind of social stratification even in our present societies. And we don't really associate, everybody under one class of people, that is, or and call them or label them the bourgeoisie. Okay, Weber, like Weber, we would also say that okay, we observe this in our society as well. You have the upper class, that is the extremely rich or the elite classes of people. Then you have the white collar workers, and then you have the middle classes. Okay, and then you also have the manual or the hard, or rather the manual working classes, or the people who are involved in hard labor. Okay, uh, now while Weber does agree to a lot of Marx's analysis of the class system, he also discusses it in another kind of context, okay, of social stratification. Because over here, he sees the class system as again part of, like as a third dimension to the social stratification system. I hope we are clear about what is social stratification. Do we know the meaning of social stratification? Yes, no?
No.
Okay. Now, society, okay, is categorizes people into different groups. Okay. These different groups are all, are something that we often refer to as gender, race. Even, it is also based on socioeconomic factors like wealth, income. So we categorize, or society categorizes people into these different groups of people. In India, we also have what is known as a caste system, okay, which is also part of the social stratification. Okay, so likewise, in the case of Weber, he stratified society, or he believed that society was structured into three different dimensions. One was class, then the second was status, and the third was power. Okay. Now, what is status? How do you define status? Hmm?
Status would be your position in society, like how you're perceived by other people.
Exactly. All right. How are you perceived by people in the society? Now, so that perception is largely dependent on the kind of prestige you hold, or social honor, what it is called as, or popularity. Okay. So you have, based on, these three important characteristics, okay, you are perceived in a certain way. Okay, you assume a certain status in society. Okay, so if you are an actor, you have a certain status. Okay, or if you are, let's say, one of the wealthiest people in society, you have a certain status. Okay, and Weber rightfully felt that that people who have a status, it enables them to have a certain influence as well on society. Okay, it may not always be dependent on a person's economic wealth. Okay, but nevertheless, it is largely dependent on what the society has perceived him out to be. Okay, so if he is a brilliant actor or whatever, okay, like, or if he is a rock star or a musician, or you know or any of that, okay, he does assume a certain status or position in society. Now the third important dimension is what Weber calls as power, okay, which is equally important in the social stratification uh, process. Now, what is power? How would you define power?
Power could be like the influence one has on other people.
Okay, very good. It is the influence on which other people exercise over uh, the others. Okay, what else?
The amount of control a particular person would have over a situation.
Very nice. Okay, uh, so Max Weber, he conceptualized power to be the ability to exercise one's will over others. Okay, very similar to what you just said, for both of you just very correctly mentioned. Okay, it is the ability to control somebody. Hmm? So, if you observe, even in, okay, let's take the example of countries today. Okay, uh, we are very well aware that the form of governance in, let's say, a country like Saudi Arabia is different from that of India, right? Are we aware of that?
Yes.
Yes. So what kind of governance do they follow? What kind of governance? Is it democracy? Is it any other form of governance?
Monarchy.
Very right. Okay, it's monarchy. Okay. Similarly, if you look at China, they also follow a different form of governance. What is that form of governance?
Communist.
Okay. Yes, they call it
They call it single party democracy.
yes. Okay, and they follow the ideology of communism. Okay, it's a one party system. Yes, very rightly, as Arth has pointed out. Okay, uh, now even though we like the three examples that I gave you follow different forms of governance, do we believe that they have a certain control over the people, and that control is more or less similar in the three mentioned countries? Hmm? Do you feel that, or you feel that, each of these governments do not have a certain power over the people? I mean, India is, it's less powerful, and China is more powerful, something like that. But do you think, or do you see that they do exercise a certain power? Hmm? Yes, no? Not similar control, agreed. But is the power still there? Is the government of India less powerful in that sense?
That's why the single party has all the powers.
All the powers, okay. But are we saying that, uh, the government of India has less power over its people? Hmm? Or does it exercise less control over the people? Are we saying that? So, yes.
It's more answerable to the people, Indian government.
Okay, it is supposedly more answerable to the people. Okay, but if you look, okay, if you look at this control that is exercised by each of these governments that I've stated, there is a certain power that it yields. Okay, and that is also the reason why people have to follow their orders. Okay, coming back to the example of the lockdown. When the government declared a lockdown, okay, do you think that, we could, I mean, what did you generally observe? What did you generally observe? What did people do in response? What were when Section 144 was imposed, for instance, in our city? Okay, what did people do? What did people do? What did you do during the lockdown? Guys, you're there? What did you do during the lockdown? Obeyed the government. Absolutely, Risha. Obeyed the government. Okay, you had no choice. You had to obey what the government said. Okay. When the government, or let's say even when the state government said that, okay, from 9 to 5, 9 in the morning to 5 in the evening, you can step out, and after that, you must be at home. Most of us were compelled to follow that order. Okay. Why do you think we are compelled? Why do you think we have to follow this order?
Fear of the consequences of disobedience.
Absolutely. Okay. There is a certain power and authority that the government exercises over people, which means that if we do not follow them, then of course we will have to bear the consequences of it. Okay. And so while if you look at the, like when you understand that the government's power is not necessarily limited to control its own citizens, you also look, or you can also observe that some governments, some world governments, or some countries exercise a certain power over other countries as well. Okay, can you give me an example of one such country?
China,
China. Okay.
the US.
The US, the most notorious of all. Okay, because if you look at if you look at some of the events that have happened, okay, in the past, like for instance the war on Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, how did the US manage to carry out such attacks without other countries, while there were a few who kind of disapproved of their acts, okay, and rightfully so, there were countries that joined hands with the US. Okay.
Because
Yes.
they control the economies of many small nations.
Precisely. Okay. So they do exercise a certain power, not within the boundaries of their own country, but also they exercise this power on other countries as well. Okay. They may be economically more powerful or militarily more powerful. Okay. So therefore, they do manage to exercise this kind of a power. Okay, but power cannot be always kind of conceptualized in a very negative way. Okay, it doesn't always have a negative connotation. For instance, if you look at people like Gandhi, for instance, okay, or even Martin Luther King Jr. Have you heard of Martin Luther King Jr.?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Who is he? Or who was he?
He was a civil rights activist in US.
Very good. Very good. Okay. He was a
60.
civil rights. Very right. He was a civil rights activist in the US, and he fought for, especially for the rights of the Black people. Okay. For the equal rights of Black people. So now, if you look at them, if you look at the two examples I just mentioned, they also exercise a certain power, no, over the people. They managed to mobilize them. They managed to kind of bring about powerful movements. Like, for instance, whenever you hear of Gandhi being mentioned, it is always associated or commonly associated to the non-violence movement. Okay. And these movements kind of highlighted forms of injustice and other atrocities performed by either the government in power or the colonial rule in the case of Gandhi and India. Okay, so therefore it is not always that power has to have a negative connotation. It can also be considered in a to bring about some kind of a positive change. Okay, but does government power necessarily equate itself to absolute power? Does government power mean absolute power? Does it mean that people cannot protest against this power? Yes, no? No, absolutely. Okay. So people can protest against this power, and we have seen this happen. Okay. Even in the case, let's take the example of India. Okay. In the events preceding the coronavirus pandemic. Okay. We were faced with the whole NRC-CAA, anti-NRC-CAA movement. Okay. Which was actually questioning the power of the government. Okay. There were movements that got mobilized, okay, on social media and other such platforms, where people came out in large numbers, and even out on the streets. Okay, people came out in large numbers to protest against this. So sometimes it is, like, while we do realize that governments have certain power, it is not to say that this power cannot be questioned by the people. Okay. Similarly, even in China or Hong Kong, okay, we saw the protests that happened, okay, last year, and that also, okay, made the Chinese government reconsider some of the policies that they were trying to implement, okay. So in Hong Kong, so likewise, we must also remember that while there is a certain kind of power, okay, that the government has, there is also a certain kind of authority that is associated to it. Now, Max Weber believed that power is one thing, but authority is quite another. Okay, so what is authority? How does it differ from power? We said that power is about exercising control, no? So what about authority?
Against the will of the people, using power using into it, like.
Yeah, against the will. So it may not necessarily be against the will. It may be actually, in fact, authority is defined more or less as accepted power. Okay, it is accepted by the people. So, for instance, when, okay, if when a traffic cop stops you, okay, yes, Anushri, formally exercising power, correct. Okay, when a traffic cop stops you for breaking the signal, okay, do you generally tend to question the authority of the traffic cop? You may try to bribe him and all that, that's a different thing. What do you think? Do you question the authority, yes or no?
No, we don't.
You don't. Okay, you don't. You obviously readily give in to that authority. Okay, so likewise, even Weber, he distinguished authority on, rather he said he distinguished authority from power, and he said that there are three types of authority, okay, by which people readily submit themselves to. Okay, one is, of course, he classified as charismatic authority. Then the second was traditional authority, and the third was what he called as the rational legal or legal rational authority. Okay, now when you look at charismatic authority, it is basically referring to all those figures of authority who kind of have maybe a kind of what do you say, who have a charismatic personality, for instance. Okay, they it's not considered there may be nothing rational about it. Okay, but yet you may follow the person's authority just because of his charisma. Okay, people mostly are drawn to let's say the personal qualities of this person. And for example, Hitler, very right. Okay, Ishan very rightly says, for example, Hitler. Can you also name somebody else closer home? Yes, it is hero worship, absolutely. Most dictators actually. Okay, Sometimes they may not always be dictators as well. But let's say, let's take the example of Narendra Modi. Hmm? He also is a charismatic personality, okay, who draws people in large numbers to him. Okay. Similarly, even Indira Gandhi, okay, she also had a charismatic personality, and even her father, okay, Nehru, also kind of drew large numbers of people towards them because of their personality, okay, or the way they spoke, the way they dressed, the way they were, okay, itself was enough. Hmm? So this kind of authority, okay, that is kind of obtained mainly because of the charisma or the personality that people assume, is what Weber defines as charismatic authority. Then there is something called as the traditional authority, okay, which is basically it is accepted traditionally because this has been the case. Okay, so people adhere to traditional authority mainly because they feel obliged to do so. Okay, can you give me examples of this? Of traditional authority. I like some of the examples here of charismatic authority. Salman Khan, Rajnikant, yes. Yes, Shreyansh, the caste system, very right. Okay. For the longest time, the caste system, okay, did yield a form of traditional authority, which was never questioned, okay, never questioned by people. Similarly, the traditional authority can be also intertwined with, let's say, cases pertaining to class or gender, okay, even gender for that matter. Because if you see, men are more likely to be privileged, okay, or considered the privileged classes than women are. And in a patriarchal system, for instance, that is followed not just in India, but in most parts of the world. Okay, men carry out authoritative roles. Okay, and this is very very unquestioned. Okay, yes, man being the head of the family due to the patriarchal system. This was considered. This is still considered to be the norm in most societies. Okay, nobody questions it. Okay, of course, with the advent of several other philosophies and ideologies coming into the picture, yes, you do question this mode of system or this mode of authority, but in spite of that, okay, you do find the patriarchal order very much prevalent in most societies across the globe. Okay, even in liberal societies. In case you thought that liberal societies had done away with patriarchy, it is not true. And then lastly, you have what is called as a rational legal authority. Okay, and for Weber, power was made legitimate under this category of authority through laws, written rules, and regulations. Okay. Classic example would be, let's say, the constitution of our country. Okay. The constitution of our country is basically a rational legal authority. Okay. Nobody really questions that. When there is something stated very clearly mentioned in the constitution, one has to abide by it. Of course, you do have cases where even governments in power have kind of become unconstitutional, okay, but try to legitimize their actions, okay, by using the rule book. Nevertheless, okay, this is what he calls as rational legal authority. But you also see forms of rational legal authority being carried out in other places other than, like, let's say, government systems. Do you find this being carried out in other systems? Like, for instance, giving you the example of a workplace. Okay, now even our college, okay, there are certain rules and regulations very clearly stated, okay, which you have to follow. You cannot really go against it, irrespective of the fact that our college is also quite a quite a liberal space. Of course, it can be questioned by many of you, but okay, in comparison to most other institutions, you will find the space quite, in fact, a space where one can interact freely and even, question certain systems to some extent, not to a large, but yes, uh, despite all of that, okay, you do have a set of rules and regulations which are clearly followed, okay, and you have to follow it. So this is also again a kind of a rational legal authority or a form of it that Weber kind of defines it to be. Any other kind of rational legal authority that you would like to cite as examples? I missed out on one comment made by Shreyansh, and when he's okay. Shreyansh, you had asked whether Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., whatever power that they yielded, could be considered as status. Yes, it could be. It was also a certain status that they had. And that is why if you look at each of these terms that we have defined here, okay, by Weber, or how Weber has classified each of these categories, you see that none can be, considered as, like what do you say, can be considered as a fixed category. Okay, you do find mergers happening. Okay, so yes, maybe, a person having, you know, traditional authority can also be found to be charismatic. Okay, or likewise, a certain person yielding a certain kind of power over society assumes a certain status also in society. Okay, so there is always this kind of, mergers and mixtures that happen. Okay, it is not like these categories remain fixed. Okay, you do see the kind of, the flexibility that the whole system has. But what is important to note here is that Weber had classified society in, in a very different way, unlike Marx. Okay, he was inspired, like I said, stated earlier, but he had a different view altogether. Okay, when it came to understanding social stratification. Any questions regarding this?
Sarah, I have a question.
Yes, please.
All the religious books or the holy books, like till some point of time, even they had like a legal status or a legal power over or control over people. So can that also be considered under rational legal authority in a sense?
Yes, to some extent. Okay, within that, let's say within that domain. Okay, within that religious domain, you have to follow those rules and regulations to be considered as a follower of that religion or belief system. You're right. That's a very good example you have given. Any other questions or comments or, or examples? Anything that you have not understood? Because if not, then we will move on to what Shima has to say. Okay.
Okay.
All
So
right,
that, yeah.
yeah.
So
Shima,
I think that was quite detailed, and it gives a background that, like when Weber was talking about social stratification, he was mostly defining all of this in terms of class. Okay, so the power or the authority which came in a traditional setup from a monarchy or from the church, and then later, under mercantilist system it changed. So but in India we have something very peculiar which is called as caste. Okay, so I just want to share one image and then let's see. Is this visible to everyone?
Yes, it is, Shima.
Okay, now anybody wants to come ahead and talk about it? What is it showing? How do you explain this?
Shima, you may have to share that again, because it's not visible anymore.
Okay, एक second. इसलिए is it visible now? No.
Yes, it is.
Can anyone come ahead, talk about it quickly? We don't even have that much of time. Okay. Is anybody writing a comment or something? No.
No.
It's the representation of the society as such, with all its different castes and
So
one
this is
image.
almost an example of drawing an institutional explanation for caste system. Okay, so even some of us who not some of us, many of us who come from these privileged castes, if you show it to your parents or you ask your elderly, they'll say कि हमारे पुराणों में ऐसा लिखा हुआ है, हमारी किताबों में ऐसा लिखा हुआ है, ये कहानी नहीं है, ये सच है, ऐसा होता है, right? So this is almost like institutionalizing this form of inequality, which we have said that okay, it comes from the Veda, it has meaning, it has reference, and so I think I'll stop sharing it, and maybe I'll just put this image later. So it is basically saying that the upper caste or the Brahminical, it also drew from what forms of labor you did. Okay, so the upper caste or the Brahmin only had access to knowledge system. Okay, they were the one who could read a Rig Veda, or they could read any religious textbook, or even touch it, or even memorize it. Okay, so a very good historical example is of Eklavya. Does anybody remember the story of Eklavya?
Yeah.
What is it?
So he was from a tribe, and like he didn't really belong to the four castes, and he wanted to be a great archer. So he approached Dronacharya because he was teaching the Kaurava princess and the Pandava princess at that time. But Dronacharya refused to teach him. But so Eklavya still like strove to achieve what he wanted, and he made a clay image of Dronacharya, and he noticed how Dronacharya taught his other students, especially Arjun, and then he learned it by himself, like he self-taught himself archery. And then one day when the princes were out on a hunt, Arjun noticed that like whatever he was, so they had a hound with them, and the hound was barking while following the prey, and because suddenly it stopped barking, and they went to a clearing, and they found that the hound had arrows inside its mouth, but it was not dead. All the arrows had done was just silent the barking. So Arjun was mesmerized by that skillful archery, and then they discovered it was Eklavya who did it. And Dronacharya asked for Guru Dakshina, since apparently he was the guru, even though he didn't teach Eklavya anything. But like he still asked for Guru Dakshina, and he asked for the thumb of the right hand. So like basically he cut off every chance Eklavya had to be a better archer than Arjun.
Exactly. And how is this story? Eklavya represents in our common discourse. He represents कि एक शिष्य कितना devoted हो सकता है, right? It is given as an example that you know he was so devoted to. मतलब अगर आप student हो तो एकलव्य जैसा होना चाहिए कि he didn't even think twice before giving up his thumb. But nobody really highlights the caste dynamics or the authority he had over the lower caste, right?
Yeah.
So this story is a very good example where so the Brahmins had this access to knowledge system, they appropriated it, only they could learn, only they could say the mantras, and the others could not do. And then in the same way the Kshatriyas, the Vaishnavas and Shudras. So this was almost like an institutionalized form of inequality which drew its rational or sense of authority or power through the religious text. And as and when the other community religious groups entered the continent of India, like Christianity or Islam, they also appropriated the same practices. Okay, so even among Muslims, the upper caste try to say that they are direct descendants of the Prophet. okay, and the others who are from the subsequent caste, they are people who have been like, you know, so the lower caste are people who were lower caste Hindus at some point of time and they converted into the upper caste. Now this Ambedkar also talks about in terms, and a lot of logic and rationale of it drew from the argument about purity and pollution, okay. So a very basic example, as you could see on the image also, that the Shudras and Dalits then came, who became the outcast, were from the lower caste. They are represented by your feet, and the Dalits are not even represented by the feet, okay. They are completely outcast. Now, एक बहुत उसका कॉमन एग्जाम्पल ये होगा कि अगर आप अपने बेड पे भी बैठते हो तो आपके पेरेंट्स कहते हैं अपना पैर नीचे रखो, पैर साफ करके रखो, राइट, क्योंकि पैर में गर्द होती है, पैर में धूल होता है, पैर गंदा होता है, ओके. सो दैट symbolic representation always existed, and it was this kind of inequality was continuously institutionalized. Now how do we understand, you know, because a lot of literature, like there's also a lot of critique about, one of the critiques about Marx is that he never acknowledged or wrote about caste, okay, and for many other theorists who come from Western philosophy, that they never understood caste and they never wrote about it. Now caste also got highly accentuated when the colonial government started in India, because they thought that this is best form to rule, okay. So one was a divide between Hindus and Muslims, but the other was also to keep accentuating this class difference, okay. So when they wrote about a continent like India, they always wrote about the practices or the rules or the regulations or the belief system of the upper caste, as if that was the dominant understanding about the community in India, okay. And there was very little which was written from the, somebody's mic is on, okay, about the lower caste, okay. Now how do we understand caste in the Marxist sense of rational, okay. So remember in the class when we spoke about class, we said that, you know, Marx basically tries to highlight the material reality of our existence, right. Can anyone come ahead and tell what was material reality of existence, or the material conception of state, or material conception of who we are, or historical materialism like we had discussed? Anyone who wants to talk or type, whatever? Any memory about what was material reality, material conception of the society? कुछ कोई guess ही कर लो. Okay, so material reality of class is, like I said, the material reality is in which you exist, okay. So if a Brahmin caste has 10 acres of land or 100 acres of land, obviously not only both his social capital and his capital in the literal sense in terms of monetary capital is very, very strong, okay. So he can access those kind of resources, he can access those kind of comforts, he can access those kind of privilege, honor, reward, security, everything, okay. So somebody who has 100 acres of land, ऑटोमेटिकली वो जमींदार हो जाते हैं, ऑटोमेटिकली वो राजा हो जाते हैं, महाराजा हो जाते हैं, नवाब हो जाते हैं, और उनकी उस तरह से इज्जत की जाती है, राइट. So it also brings you privilege, it brings you honor, it brings you of course a lot of monetary benefits, it also brings you reward, okay. So if you see the colonial history of India, we had titles for Subedar, Raja, Maharaja. These were also titles, you know, which were given, different posts were created, and it was almost like rewarding the system, rewarding the caste system, okay. And then of course it brings you a lot of security not only in terms of monetary security, but also security in terms of your social capital. So what is social capital? Social capital is the capital which exists because of your network, okay, which exists because of इनहेरिटेड एट्रीब्यूट्स यू हैव. तो आप किस खानदान से हैं, किस जाति से हैं, किस रॉयल फैमिली से हैं, आप कौन से स्टेट के बिलोंग करते थे. You had earlier a lot of these states, and those brought in privileges, you know, like a very good example, if you read any books by Ramchandra Guha and other, they'll talk that how a lot of these people went to Doon school, you know, like Rajiv Gandhi went to Doon school, Sam Pitroda went to Doon school, or a very good example is NDTV itself, you know, NDTV, most of the journalists who are now like very, very serious, whether it is Sonia Razdan, Pranav Rai himself, Vishnu Som, or Barkha, or Rajdeep Sardesai, they all had parents who came from very privileged backgrounds. So most of their parents were IAS, IFS officers, or some elite circle, okay? So clubs, when you have these local clubs or neighborhood clubs, they don't just help you access the facility कि भाई club है तो sports club है, वहाँ पे आप cricket खेलेंगे, golf खेलेंगे. No, golf खेलना भी एक exercise है to access social capital, that, you know, to access capital of who is doing what kind of business, okay? So this is the material conception of caste, okay? So for example, if I have a class discussion in the class and I say, oh, have you heard that Pink Floyd music which talks about breaking the rule? And you know, a lot of you have not would have heard, and I would judge, but many of you who went to some elite school, some convent school, you have read Merchant of Venice, and you've seen Godfather movie, and you know about Pink Floyd, and the teacher thinks, oh, you are very well endowed, you know, you're very well aware. But there are people, you know, who don't have access to that kind of a knowledge system, don't have access to that kind of resource, who don't have access to that kind of privileges, okay? So many of us, you know, even our parents keep these discussions alive कि अरे कास्ट रिजर्वेशन से हमारे बच्चों का हक चला जाता है, right? But what they don't realize is that you have inherited so much. You have inherited a good school, your parents are providing कि आपके पास एक space है जहाँ पे आप अकेले बैठ के लैपटॉप पे पढ़ रहे हैं, आपके parents आपको बोर्नविटा पिला रहे हैं, you go to a coaching institute, you know, your parents are packing you tiffins. That brings in a lot of privileges, that makes your movement easier, that makes your struggle less, okay? And then you go ahead and you do all these medical and engineering and other degrees and other practices. But here are some people who are working in the morning, who don't have access to even the basic books required to clear an entrance exam, and then they're trying to crack that exam, which is always in English, which is in computer, you know, because today all your exams are happening online. Even institutes like Tata Institute of Social Sciences, which is supposed to be like a social, so now they have their entrance exam online, and people can't, not every student has the practice कि वो 150 minutes में 150 questions को click करे और उसको save भी कर ले और उसको पता हो कि right click होता है या left click होता है. Okay, so these are basically and roughly the material conception of caste, that and what we now also call the Marxist understanding of caste, okay? And so Ambedkar emphasized, and this all these examples, everyday examples which I gave you, where he's saying caste system is a division of laborers, it is not a division of labor. So it is not कि हमें कल 100 sweeper चाहिए बॉम्बे का ड्रेन क्लियर करने के लिए, और जो पहले 100 लोग आएंगे उनको हम दे देंगे. It doesn't happen like that. पहले 100 में ऐसा नहीं होता कि कोई भी मिश्रा, शर्मा, प्रसाद, झाजी कोई भी आ जाते हैं. It is always the lower caste. We always go and look for Dharavi slums. We always go and look in Manpur and then ask them to come and clean that. So we are not actually dividing the labor category, but we are just dividing and accentuating the practice of who has been doing what, you know. तो जो जमादार है उनको हम हमेशा इमेजिन करते हैं कि वो जमादार ही रहेंगे. So roughly that is how we are going to take it, as in how you should imagine and question. And of course it is a very long narrative. Some of the quick movies I could think you can watch is Kala by Rajnikant, and I don't remember the name, but Kala se pehle bhi same director had made a movie with Rajnikant. Can anyone remember? Even that movie highlights this question of caste very interestingly. Kala very interestingly highlights not only about caste, but caste in different religious groups in Dharavi. And of course there's this movie called Masan, which was made for the first time ever by even a director who's from a scheduled caste, and he was very vocal about it. Neeraj Gaiwan. Any comments, questions? Did it make sense? Do you want more discussion around it? Just keep writing if you don't want to talk. Nothing?
So we'll be downloading, sorry, not downloading, uploading a very interesting book for you to read. Okay, this is about, what is the title, Shima? It's about
Gendering
gender and
caste.
caste.
It's by
Gendering caste, yes.
caste, Uma Chakravarti. So this question in about caste will also take in subsequent other classes also. You know, when we do about labor, when we do about gender, we also will keep that category alive. You know, because we cannot just talk about labor as flatly or gender as in that platform. But some comments, you know, here. Is it the film by Paranijit? Paranijit.
What is the name of the movie?
Movie, the one is Kala for sure, okay, which was released last year.
Yeah. No, Nishanti.
This-
Nishanti. What is it?
That you had mentioned earlier. One is Masan, the other is Kala.
Yeah.
And I know there was another movie made by the same director with Rajnikant before Kala. मुझे अभी Kabil. Yeah.
Yes.
Correct,
Yes,
correct.
you're right. Sir, you're right.
Even our film industry has nobody from lower castes.
Except for Neeraj
Gaiwan, who made
Gaiwan,
Masan.
yeah.
हाँ.
Yes, yes.
Actors में तो कोई भी नहीं है.
No, I can't think of any.
So even Amitabh Bachchan had gone to Doon School, and that's how he knew Indira Gandhi. And Indira Gandhi was the one who referred him to Bollywood. To what was that writer's name? Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, who then took him as this thing. Of course, this discussion around caste is endless.
Yeah.
Anyone, any other discussion, suggestion? Fandry
Yes.
talks about caste.
Yes, very nice. It's a very good film. Very good film.
Yeah.
I agree.
Even that movie.
Even the other one, the recent one, no?
जिसका वो गाना बड़ा famous है.
Yes. And a Hindi movie was also.
धड़कन.
Yes. Yes, something Dhadak.
Dhadak, yes. Sairat.
Yes.
And so
Sairat,
everyone
correct.
should watch Sairat, where you know the question and identity of the characters in terms of caste is very, very explicit and open, okay? But if you see in Dhadak, it has been made softer, as if you know the multiplex going audience will not really like to engage with. You know, मतलब इतना पैसा लगाएंगे and you know those actors. So if you do, there was a lot of discussion around it also that Dhadak actually didn't engage with the question of Sairat so
very
upfront in terms of caste question as Sairat itself did. Article 15, yes. Article 15 is the first movie which has started any such discussion. And of course, you know, there's a lot of literature. There's this wonderful Marathi writer who is written called Juthan. I don't remember his name. If you are interested, maybe I'll look for it and write. There is a Hindi novel called Nacho Gopal. मुझे नाम बड़ा याद नहीं रहता, but there's a lot more literature, there's a lot more poetry about it. But yes.
Any comments from the class? Anything that you'd like to ask?
So how many of you also feel that yes, our educational institutions and even our faculty subtly don't discriminate on the basis of caste, because not everybody maybe is not quick enough, but you know the kind of access to knowledge system you have had, or the kind of access to schools you went, or things you read, or the music club you joined does make a difference in respect to many other people. And you know, and then the kind of designs you make and the kind of literature you quote, or the summer internships you do. Okay. Thank you for the name, Pa Ranjit. I always forget his
Ranjit,
name.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ranjit, yeah.
Yeah, but any comment about the question I've just raised now? Or everybody's just trying to hide and not indulge in a question about it?
Also, you can watch this documentary film called Shit. 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 Okay, that's also a very interesting film. Okay, that talks about caste system. It's about the film I think is set in Madurai. So if you get an access to watching this film online, which I think you will on YouTube or any other platform, please do watch it.
And just before I forget, is that this whole narrative around caste or caste is kept alive on the basis of two things. Okay, one is gender, which we'll deal in detail later, and the other is through violence. Okay, everyday violence. Okay, so example, like last year there were two examples in Rajasthan जहाँ पे जो दूल्हा लोअर कास्ट का था और वो घोड़ी पे चढ़ गया था और उसको गोली मार दी गई थी, or somebody from a lower caste going to access water from a well from an upper caste area, or even our parents always tell कि किसी दूसरे जाति के इंसान से शादी नहीं करना है. So anyone who still thinks caste is being taken care of in our capitalist framework, in a global world, and we are a global community, only when your parents allow you to marry anyone you want, then only you believe that it's gone. As long as your parents tell अपने जाति के बाहर नहीं जाना है. Also the movie Manji, yeah. Even
sorry. No, I'm not sure whether Manji is about the caste system. It doesn't really. I don't know whether it is implicitly.
It also highlights the fact that the kind of heroes we have had. So and like from last I think from last 7-10 years, there's also a parallel narrative which happens around Durga Puja, Diwali festivals, Dashera festival. The kind of example like we saw that Eklavya is presented as an ideal student. मतलब विद्यार्थी होना चाहिए तो एकलव्य जैसा होना चाहिए. But we didn't talk about that. It was so inhuman to ask somebody to cut the thumb because they didn't want him to practice anymore. Okay, so there's also a lot of discussion from several tribal groups about how different festivals are represented and what is the narrative around it. जैसे एक किताब है सौ रामायण, जिसमें उसकी अलग कहानियां हैं इस पूरे डिस्कशन. लाइक आप उस पूरे रामायण को भी अगर दूसरे कास्ट ग्रुप से पढ़ेंगे तो कैसे पढ़ेंगे. ओके, एनीवन हु वांट्स टू नो ऑल दीज नेम्स, प्लीज just message me. मुझे नाम याद नहीं आता. I'll have to look. I have those books. I can upload the images if you want. क्या था recently? There was an incident of yes, totally Nishanti. And then we all ended up writing about Black Lives Matter. Even recently, a lower caste boy was chanting, yes. Just now, before I started the class, there was a news that a Dalit man was brutally beaten up, killed because he was not wearing a mask in Hyderabad. Karna faces still life for being a Suta. Yes, good. Or kuch.
So in the next class, we
who is presenting next class?
Yeah, I think the third group, no? That is probably from 21 to 30. One moment. Ishan asked a question. How do we differentiate between class and caste, especially in our country?
Ishan, you only tell. First you tell. What do you think? कुछ attempt करो.
Okay, surnames. Diya says so through surnames. Okay. Interesting observation.
She is telling कि differentiate कैसे करना है तो उसने बता दिया ऐसे कर लिया करो.
Very nice.
बिल्कुल सही बात।
Good
इसलिए हम
observation.
लोग
Very good observation.
ट्रेन में सफर करते तो सबसे पहले उनसे हमेशा पूछते हैं क्या नाम है। जैसे मेरे नाम अगर मैं शीमा बोल दूं तो किसी को कुछ समझ में नहीं आता, तो फिर वो और पूछते हैं पूरा नाम क्या है, पापा का नाम क्या है, मोहल्ले का नाम क्या है। तो फिर वो just because everybody wants to figure out that you are from which caste. I'm sure a lot of you go, when you go in Juhu areas looking for a PG, everybody wants to know if you are from which caste or community. Is that true? Just say yes, no. Raise your hands. How many of you were asked your caste when you went looking for a PG in Juhu or anywhere? Ayushi, yes, it is true. Not in my case. Okay, not asked. Okay. Okay. But you are also aware that your name is sufficient for the broker and the landlord to figure out you are from which caste, right? Are you aware about that? That your name itself, and especially in Maharashtra where your whole name has to come, the full name, the full title, the community, the subcaste, the gotra, everything is explicitly written.
You don't have to worry. Yeah, Vidisha, not necessarily. Okay, it may not be asked directly. Okay, but there may be always indirect references to it. Ishan was saying that the caste is highly overlapping with class. Again, see, you're not really determined by not just determined by the levels of income that you earn, okay, or make. It is largely by the caste that you belong. Okay, so sometimes even caste determines your, your status in society or your class in society.
Yeah.
Like Shima very rightly pointed out, who takes up jobs pertaining to, let's say, manual, whether it is manual scavenging or whether it is even, cleaning up your sewages and all of that. Who does this? It will never be people from the upper caste. Okay, it will always be people from the lower caste.
Or even say, today people from any just yesterday somebody was telling about a building, a huge gated community kind of a building which has come up in Khar, where uh, they had refused a large number of caste groups and other groups, and it's empty now, and now they're thinking they'll take everyone. But discrimination on the basis of caste and religion and food practices, because your caste also decides your food practices in this city or any city, is like very, very rampant and common. Like
Absolutely.
if you don't want to as in if you're not sure about it, wherever you live, in whichever neighborhood you live, नीचे जाके नेम प्लेट पे देख के आओ, लिस्ट बनाओ, सबका कास्ट लिखो, अपने आप समझ में आ जाएगा. And like I said, if you could also do this exercise that I found this Harvard educated multi-millionaire people, but he's from some other caste, and especially for girls, if your parents allow you to marry, then you think that class will take care of caste. Yup, the surname indicates which in the case of arranged marriage they usually look for a family. Yes, yes. वो अभी आई है ना Netflix पे, क्या है वो series?
Yeah, some what is that? Marriage thing, no? Yeah,
arranged marriage.
I haven't watched it. But yes, I know there's been a lot of conversation around it.
Indian matchmaking.
Indian
Yes. How many of you saw Indian matchmaking? Raise your hands. We'll grade now. Indian matchmaking.
How was it, Dia? Gargi, Zoya.
I was actually shocked they actually let such a show like even be uploaded on Netflix, because it's so misogynist, casteist, sexist, it's everything. And I don't know, I mean, I don't know, like, how is it even allowed to be put up? Like
See,
it's so blatant.
हाँ.
It's like they're not even like censoring it, and it's not even like a sort of parody. It's like
No, you
Right.
should be
it's
happy. It's a social commentary.
but it's
You know?
not meant to be that. They've just uploaded it
But
on
it
like a
is.
normal
Show
show.
it to your mom, show it to your elders, show it to your relatives. They all will say, देखो कितना सही है, but बच्चियों को बड़ों का बात सुनना चाहिए.
No, my only issue was that if you're, like making such a show, I mean, the only reason you would make it is to highlight how wrong it is, but that isn't
Right.
done.
हाँ,
Like,
वो एक debate है जो there is also a discussion that probably it will have another season and then they will highlight or question all of this, and this is not clear, but everyone should be happy that जिसको कहते हैं हमारे समाज का आईना है, और अपने एल्डर्स को दिखाओ, देखो वो तुम्हें कितना ज्ञान देंगे इसके बारे में. That is wrong with the society. मम्मी से पूछ के बताना. Answering to Shima's earlier question, I feel school doesn't discriminate to that extent, but yes, in junior and higher college, discrimination is felt, noticed in different ways. Yeah, of course, our colleges, that was much better than many other junior colleges or other colleges also.
Right.
But even all these colleges have management quota. Who has access to management quota? अब सोचने वाली बात है ना, मैनेजमेंट किसको पहचानती है? That's social capital, Who is part of the management? Whom does management acknowledge? Where do you meet these people who are part of the management? In some club, in some marriage, even all the religious satsang group, or even among Christians or Muslims, we have these जहाँ औरतें जाती हैं, मिलती हैं, वो सब क्या होता है? वो सब social capital है, जहाँ पे आप अपने बच्चों की शादी के बारे में बात करेंगे, बिजनेस के बारे में बात करेंगे, किसका कहाँ एडमिशन हुआ, किससे एडमिशन हो सकता है.
True.
ओके, और कुछ क्वेश्चन?
All right, then we'll meet you next week. The group that is making the presentation, I hope you know who you are. 2 groups are there, or one? Just one reading, no? Acha, 2, okay.
2 groups, 2 reading.
All right.
Strongly agree, Parab. Okay, good.
All right.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Okay, see you. Bye-bye.
ये सारा attendance का किया ना?
I have downloaded it. Yeah. I'm stopping the recording also. Yeah.